You know, it's actually a very, very tough thing to say because I've always been that guy who, was going to get married, but then got a drug addiction. And what was a trophy couple relationship, done, ruined. And yet every single night, I mean, not recently, but someone would come over at 3 in the morning and want relationship advice. They call it the way station because I would weigh out everybody's problems. So the girl and the guy, usually one of them drunk, would come by, knock on my window at 2 in the morning. We'd go into the garage, smoke, drink, do whatever we had to do, and we'd talk out what the problem was, who has a problem with who, and who did what, and if they were even together, because sometimes the problem was so big they just didn't want to be around the other person. And I would sit there as a referee with impartial judgment, and I'd have to say, because one of them would claim me, they would basically be like, I bet you Don agrees, I bet you Don says it's true, I bet you Don says it's right. So then they would come to my house and plead their cases. And I get challenged into, well, we'll see what he says. Like, I mean, who put me into authority like that? But the same thing goes, just my observations and what I've read and what I've seen and what I've heard and what I'm looking at every day is, dude, we had it not just a little bit worse. And I'm not talking about like chores and shit. I'm talking about like the real world. I mean, we had our sisters were pregnant in the basement from dad. Dad was a drinker. Dad did go to work, but then he beat us on the way home. The drinking water out of the hose is one thing. But, I mean, we had some serious issues. I mean, now it's, baby on board. When we were kids, it was like, there has to be like a week go by before you even report them missing, and they're 6. They're putting, there was never any report for putting poison in candy, but they told us that basically all of our neighbors were trying to poison us. Every kid is missing. Every kid is found with his body chopped up. So, nowadays, you just do not hear stories like that. I mean, I don't think I've heard more than one in 4 years, unless it's just not getting reported. Situation where the kids got locked in this room, got beaten, and was never fed for a week. And that shit was every day when I was fucking 20. So Gen X parents are definitely not living up to raising their kids like they were raised. But I have heard what the observations are. I mean, it was funny because, on this one news show, the two of the people that were hosting it said, well, from what I understand, these rumors come out, of course, but, these Gen X parents are helicopter parents. And that's kind of the idea that's been pushed out there. And this woman was actually correcting them, saying, no. Everyone's been saying that. That because we were mistreated, that we're supposed to be like hovering over our kids and watching everything that they do. And we're all up in their business. And who's calling you? And where are you going after school? And this and that. And that's turning out not to be true at all. In fact, the opposite's true. And it probably is working pretty well. From what I see in public, it's working pretty well. And that is, basically, the parents are obviously, they're not letting the kids do whatever they want. But at some stage, they are. They're letting them go out and explore. Now, they're giving them a big field of play. It's like having a dog. You got them on a very, very long leash. And the parents are kind of like the fire department, where basically the parents don't get involved. The parents will ask you what's going on in your life, but they don't, like, shove their nose into it or blackmail you with money if you don't do this and don't do that, or if you don't get good grades in this, then I don't care if you're acing art, And that the whole situation comes down to that basically it's when the kid gets into some sort of trouble or hot water, however you want to measure that, where it's now becoming a problem. His behavior, well, we let him be himself, but now being himself is getting him in trouble. Then they jump in and they're full force parents. Then they go into all of a sudden full parent mode. I'm taking over. I'm taking control of this aircraft. But the woman was saying that in the meantime, really, Gen X is really 90% of the time just watching in the distance and not saying a word. And it's working. But when the kid needs help, boom, they're there like the fucking SWAT team. And they're getting very involved, more involved than our parents did when we had serious problems. But the majority of the time, we're not in their business at all. And it's turning out pretty good, all things considered, when you look at the last 40 years.